This request asks about backlighting, but specifically about how backlighting might change gradation. Well, it's probably time for us to look at what light actually does. Some of the requests I get ask questions like, how do you paint grass? How do you paint this? How do you paint this? That. But I don't get many questions asking about how light affects things. What we forget sometimes is that it's how the light is hitting something that causes it to do what it's doing. Now think about it. If the light is coming directly at you, in other words, if you're looking ahead and the light is directly in front of you, then anything that's between you and that light source is you're seeing in shadow in front because the light is behind it, and that's backlighting. We have some examples of backlighting here where you can tell in this one the sun is setting right there behind everything. Of course, it's later in the afternoon, obviously things are going to be darker in front, but all this is in shadow. Even these white sheep would be painted much darker than you know their local color to be. Here we have another kind of backlighting. The light is not directly behind, but it is behind and between, and the subjects here are actually between us and the light source. We can see the trees here are all in shadow with a little bit of what we call edge lighting. That's when the light is producing an edge of light on an image. We see a little bit of edge lighting on this one. We see how dark that is. Now, if you look at the gradation of that, which is what the request is about, the gradation of this tree is much narrower than the gradation is if the light is shining on it. If the light is behind or to your right or to your left, or if it's behind you in some location or ahead. In other words, if the light and you are both hitting the image, in other words, your vision is hitting the image along with the light rays, then you're going to see a broader gradation. So if you take something like this, for example, I can show you what we would do here, and then I can show you what would happen if it weren't in backlighting. So the thing that happens in backlighting is that the gradation is much closer, but you still have the gradation. So I'm just going to do a very just a little bit here to show you the difference. Now we're not going to have a true situation here because we have light there. This is light, and so I'm going to have to set up a situation for you. So let's just do a little bit of something here. Let's say this then would be something to represent that tree trunk. A little bit something like that. And then I'm going to do another one right here. So I'm giving a little bit more lean than the tree trunk actually has. This is just an illustration. It's not meant to be a painting, as I often say. Okay, now the situation around this is the light is coming this way, and so what is on either side of the light is a combination of light and dark. We see more dark here than we do light. So I'm just sort of going to throw a little bit of dark there, a little bit dark just around this, just to kind of create a situation that is similar to what we're looking at there, to show you, because without this dark you don't see the effect of the backlighting. All right, so I'll do a little bit of that on the other side. Even though we do see light in the distance, as you see, it's between the brighter light we see is between these things in front, but everything that's in front of that light is mostly in shadow except where the light's hitting the edges. We don't have that here because the light is completely behind the images. So all this stuff falls in shadow. All right, so the backlighting is going to be different in different situations. So we don't make rules about this. What we do is learn to observe it and learn what to look for. So I'm just going to throw both of these little images right here pretty much in the same kind of value situation, where I'm going to throw just some dark around the image itself and show you the difference between the gradation, which is what the viewer asked, the question was about, the difference in the gradation and gradation in the light when the light is a backlit or when the light is coming from a direction that is light rays are actually striking the image itself. So what we have here then is something like this. If you'll notice right here, this is where it's darkest because this is where the dark meets the light. We have the more reflected light right here. This is reflecting, what we see here is a little bit lighter, is reflecting the light that's coming back in this way. That's called reflected light. And you see we have that very narrow gradation. So it would gradate then something like this, where the darker, let me just get that, leave enough space for edge lighting there. So we have the darker part there, and then we see that it gradates, and it gradates in a very narrow range. So the value doesn't change a whole lot. It changes just a little bit. So we'll have this, just move this right. You see right up in here, as it gets next to this part, the part of the tree is, there we go, right there. You see that part of the tree? All right, so now you can see that value is a little bit lighter than the value behind it right in here, but I'm looking at this darker value, not the lighter value there. So a little bit lighter, but not extremely light. And so we show that. I'll soften that edge just a little bit there. Now we have that gradation. It's a very narrow gradation that happens between the darkest part and the lightest part. So let's just kind of create a little bit of a gradation there, and sort of like that as it comes down. And then we have that edge light. And I'm just going to leave the canvas blank there to sort of indicate that edge light. I'm going to shape that just a little bit differently on this side right here as it comes down. Shape it a little bit because I get that just a little bit lighter. All right, so now you can see this is a very narrow gradation. It goes from a range of dark to lighter, kind of in this range right in here. So that's about what you're going to see. You're going to see the relationship will be very much the same. Now, if we were seeing the same thing in more of a direct light, where the light is not back of the image itself, but the light is coming from a direction either to the right of us or to the left of us. Let's say that if the light's coming kind of in this direction to more or less the left of us, then we would see something. We wouldn't see the edge lighting again, but we would see something sort of like what I'm going to show you now, where we would see the darker part as it's moving around, but then we're going to see a wider gradation, a wider range of gradation. And so depending on how bright the light is, we might see a gradation that would be something, as soon as I can get it in there, I can show you something sort of, get that a little bit, I'm trying to get enough texture in there to kind of show tree-ness and get that out of there. All right, now I have seen the light strike when it's coming directly like this. I've seen the light hit the trees really bright in an area like that, for example. So we get a really broad range of gradation. And so we get this on here, and then rinse the brush out. So then as it moves away, if the light's over here, then this part of the tree trunk begins to move away from the light source. And as it moves away from the light source, it doesn't receive as many light rays. And so what happens when it doesn't receive as many light rays, it goes into a kind of shadow. It will, as it goes, and what we usually see in that kind of situation is that as it goes around the back side of the tree trunk, we don't see the back side, but we can see it moving around towards the back side. And so as it's moving around towards the back side of the tree trunk, it can get very dark, even when the bright light is shining on it. You know, get that more gradated. Let's just give it a little bit more blend right in here, and we should get that more of a gradation. And that still is not quite the range of the gradation that we might see. And so it's going to vary. The important thing is that we observe, and then that we respond to what we are observing. Not that we make rules about how things should go, but what I'm trying to show you, my idea here is to show you how to look for it. So look for this sort of thing. Now this might go a little bit darker even over here, depending on the location of the light, but it's highly possible that range of gradation might go even this strong, might even be that strong. See, so there's a value range there, a value range here that will go from somewhere about right here over to maybe about right here. In some cases you might even see it this bright. So that's what happens. Now let's take this way and show you another situation there, and that is when the backlight, the light here is coming from the back, as you can see, but we have another situation right here. And you see here we have a similar situation as we have in the former photographs we looked at, backlight. But what I want to point out here is that how dark the shadow portion of this is. This is in shadow. There's some edge light coming through here. That's edge light. All that is edge light, where the light rays are striking just the edge. But then when you come down to the actual body of the bird here, look how dark that is. So if I take the value scale and hold it up like here, you see that really becomes a lot darker than what we know white to be. Well, then if you look here, this is very subtle. So what's happening here is that the rays are behind, right here, they're behind this, but the rays themselves, there's a little bit of atmospheric perspective going on there. The rays themselves are obscuring, because they're so bright, they're obscuring what we see here, and they are reflecting on these portions of the trees here that are turned more towards light rays. But we see all this frontal stuff right here is in shadow. All this is in shadow. And so we look at scenes like that, and we don't look at them as if they're flat surface, but we look at them realizing where things are located in space. This being in space, these grasses being in space, are located very close to us, and the light's way back there behind there, causing all these to go very dark. But then the light rays are hitting the grass here, and they're causing the grass to be much lighter. But I want you to notice there's a gradation there even in the grass. So that I hope that will give you some clues as to what to look for. That anytime there is a backlighting, look first of all for everything between you and the light. The light will be behind the subject, and so the subject then is between you and the light rays. Those light rays are coming this way causing what's in front not to be able to catch light rays and therefore going to shadow. But then other things can happen to light too. So, but if you start there and realize that where those things are in shadow, that gradation is going to be closer, much closer. And then where the things are being hit more directly by light, especially things that have curvature in them, the gradation is going to be much wider. There'll be many more intervals of gradation from dark to light. So it'd be interesting for you to study that kind of thing and study it just from that point of view and not trying to look at it, how do you do a tree, or how do you do foliage, or how do you do all that kind of stuff. Switch your attention to what caused you to see things the way you do. Be sure and view all of our quick tips. And while you're doing so, subscribe to the channel, click on the bell so you'll always get a notice when we produce a new quick tip, which is every week. And if you have a question, leave it in the comments section and we'll make a quick tip for you. Also, take a trip over to DianneMize.com where I have full-length lessons, downloads, DVDs, lots of other stuff there, some free stuff for you. And while you're there, you can subscribe to the newsletter, and that way you'll always be informed every time we do something new.